I'm sure you remember it, right? Everybody does. The build-up to Grand Theft Auto 5. No matter what you thought of the game on release, or the years since, whether you love it, hate it, or are somewhere in between, surely you remember that feeling, the anticipation, the atmosphere in the air, everyone talking about Grand Theft Auto 5. From the very first trailer that dropped in late 2011 to the release in late 2013, it was 2 years of build-up that felt closer to 20. I went from 14 to 16, and a lot changes between those ages, but one thing that didn't was my excitement for Grand Theft Auto. GTA 5 really is the game of all time. It's the most sold video game other than Minecraft, and it's the highest grossing single piece of entertainment media of all time. And also happens to actually be good. At least from what I remember. I mean, it's Rockstar, so it has to be, right?
Okay, fine. I guess we can double check.
I haven't played Grand Theft Auto 5 since it came out. It's been 10 years since I played it. A lot has changed in my life since then. I remember being stupidly excited for this game when I was 16, failing my A-levels by making shit like this in my study periods. Now, I was so excited because I loved GTA 4. I played so much of that game when I was too young. Sorry, Mum. I made so many memories in multiplayer, some of which is still up on my channel today.
Oh, there's a brawl. Oh, yes, there's a brawl. Oh my gosh. Okay, I think they're all trying to hit each other. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. It's a brawl. It's a brawl. They all just died.
I always considered Red Dead Redemption Rockstar's best game until the obvious. I mean, Red Dead has always just appealed more to me. The immersion, the world, the character drama, and the tragedy of it all wrapped up in a satirical world that has a lot to say about modern society as much as the foundation upon which modern America is built. It's also clever and fun and deeply meaningful to me. It's cohesive and tangible, and above all, it's focused. I loved Grand Theft Auto 4 because it was somewhat similar. I mean, to be honest, Nico ends up on a similar path to that of John in a lot of ways, hunting down the former comrades he served within the military to get revenge for something heinous that happened to him. He's a serious man in a ridiculous world, and that grounds you in the story. But it also has focus. It uses Nico's outsider perspective to explore the absurdity of the American dream, and thereby the absurdity of American culture, politics, and society. I loved the tone, the vibe, all of that. And then GTA 5 came out. Now, don't get me wrong here. When I played GTA 5 at 16, I adored it. But in the years since, I've always said I just prefer GTA 4. It's more my speed, and it didn't really help that the online for 5 was milked like the last cow on earth, with its milk being the cure for cancer. We also won't be talking about the online in this video. I'd rather blow my brains out. I never felt GTA 5 had the staying power of a GTA 4 or a Red Dead Redemption or, RDR2. It feels memorable for the buzz around the game more than the substance of the game. But that said, I haven't revisited GTA 5 in 10 years, which is fucking insane, all things considered, if we're being honest, and so I'm not particularly sure what I feel about it. I either see people talking about how it's unbelievably overrated or secretly underappreciated for its narrative, so here we are today, 10 years later, to take a look at Rockstar's most famous game of all time. Now, we all know Grand Theft Auto is one of the most famous franchises of all time, which is why this video is sponsored by another of one of the most famous franchises of all time, Metal Gear Solid. It's very exciting, especially for me, as I've never touched this insanely famous franchise. But now is the perfect time. On October 24th this year, Konami is releasing the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1, which ports over 7 of the classic Metal Gear Solid games to next-gen consoles, including Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, Metal Gear Solid, as well as the HD collection versions of Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty and Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, as well as some additional bonus content as well. Like I said, I've never played Metal Gear Solid before, but people keep telling me to. I honestly can't escape it at this point. And now, with this collection on the horizon, it might finally be time for me to just hop in from the beginning and marathon through these games to see what all the fuss is about. Even though I've yet to play this franchise, it's really hard to miss the way that it pioneered the action stealth genre, with its engaging gameplay and strategic stealth, but also with its rich story and interesting characters, which is usually how people try to sell it to me. And look, I'm sold. I've just been waiting for the right time to jump on board, and like I said, it looks like that's coming up soon. I can already tell by looking through the comments on the most recent reveal trailer that people are incredibly excited for these games to be coming back around. They're incredibly passionate about the stories that were told and the gameplay itself, and it's very exciting for a whole new generation to be getting into that. Seeing other people's passion for a piece of art that resonated with them, it makes me want to engage with that piece of art too. So I'm actually very, very excited. If you're interested, hit the link down in the description and cop yourself a pre-order for Metal Gear Solid The Master Collection Volume 1. And thank you again to Konami for sponsoring this video.
There is a deep nostalgia factor to GTA 5 that I think most people can relate to. This game was huge when it came out, like it still is today, but it was on a scale I've never seen before, not even by something like Red Dead Redemption 2. I had friends who had never touched a video game in their life, even my grandparents asking me about GTA 5, because it was everywhere, it was inescapable, and that just made the excitement, especially as a teenager, even more spectacular. But on top of that aspect, 2013 was a hugely interesting year for me personally. It was a very transitional period of my life. I turned 16, I met a lot of new people that would be super important to me in the years to come. I finished school, I started my A-levels. It's the first year my YouTube channel finally saw some traction and was seen by a large number of people all at once. I hit 1,000 subscribers after 2 years of creating content, and that makes revisiting Grand Theft Auto 5 after 10 years feel even stronger. The feeling I got driving Michael's signature car through the Rockford Hills as the rhythm of the night starts up on the radio just transported me back to 2013, of those late nights of pure escapism from my life that had become so much more complicated so quickly, in a game that might have the greatest escapism of all time in Grand Theft Auto. It's an indescribable feeling, and so I can't help it, but this playthrough was immediately coloured by reams of nostalgia across the entire runtime. I'm not sure I've had this amount of fun revisiting a game in my life, and I never held Grand Theft Auto 5 that highly. I never considered it to be one of the best games of all time. I still probably don't. But the circumstance around its release and the time I left between the playthroughs and that Rockstar charm just penetrated my usual stony facade and made me feel warm for no other reason than remembering one of the most memorable years of my life. To have a brief moment of self-reflection on where I've gone, what I've accomplished, and who I am 10 years later was not something I really expected to have upon booting this game up again, and it was a strange feeling, but it was kind of wonderful, and that definitely set the mood for the entire playthrough to come. This wasn't a normal playthrough though. I wanted to do something similar to my Skyrim video where I used mods. I feel like part of Grand Theft Auto's legacy in the decade since it came out is the modding scene. That said, modding Grand Theft Auto 5 is not the same as Skyrim by any means, in the process, but also in the culture. In Skyrim, you hop onto the Nexus and you simply download your mods, anything you can think of, and these days it's such an easy process if you know the basics. I'd even go as far as to call it a relaxing process, when the load order is right and not wrong and you don't get 50 red exclamation marks. GTA, on the other hand, is very, very different. There really aren't many guides online, especially not from high-profile people like there are for Skyrim. I was following one guide, and midway through, the dude just...
Then uncheck the VR toolkit. But if you don't, then...
What the fuck just happened? Am I being pranked? Just as an aside though, the dude was super helpful. I would have given up otherwise. Now, as for the mods I used, I didn't want to change too much. It was mainly visual stuff. I'll try to remember to link them all in the description if I can remember the ones that I got. I used GTA 5 Remastered, which adds various clutter to the game. And I also used Forest mod that adds forest to around Los Santos and then out into Blaine County, making it more dense and packed full of trees, which is really nice. But also, sometimes it would just do this. that's how trees work. Don't worry about it. I obviously used a trainer menu to spawn shit and to turn Franklin into a bird, and then the main article, an EMB with a bit of altering of ReShade to just make it pop. Now, EMBs in Grand Theft Auto 5 are sort of hard to come by. There are a few that exist that are like totally free, but the best ones are usually locked behind a paywall, usually a Patreon, which is the absolute antithesis to the modding culture we see in something like Skyrim. Now, I decided to go with QuantV or QuantV, mainly because everywhere I looked, people said it was full of malware, and so I didn't feel too bad about pirating it. I mean, I would never do that. I obviously paid £8.50 for a graphics mod. And hey, look, I've not my personal details stolen yet, so I'd call that a win. I can't really be mad at people monetizing their mods. I mean, when you work on something and develop something that people want in their droves, it makes sense as a business decision to monetize it, especially when others have proven it's a valid job opportunity. It just feels like the modding etiquette is just so different to stuff that I've experienced before. Skyrim mods are made by deeply passionate people who release them for free because of their love of the craft and the game and the community. And often, these creators do get compensated for their work through donations. I know in my years, I've donated to plenty of... What? I know in my years, I've donated to a couple of modders that I thought did a stellar job, but there's still some, like Skyblivion, that's been in development now for 11 years, that the developers just refuse donations. Which, I mean, that's mad, but you kind of have to respect it. It feels like a lot of GTA mods are mainly made because they're visual alterations that they can make a quick buck off of, rather than a genuinely creative piece. I mean, why are you selling ReShade presets? I spent 15 minutes with ReShade, which is a free tool, and I made it look pretty. It's really not that hard. How are people charging for this? Who's buying this? And I think it's interesting that you look at some of the biggest modding projects, the ones that are the most ambitious, the most creative. Those are usually the ones where they don't want any money for it. The ones that are pretty easy, the ones that are kind of ripping you off, those are the ones that they're going to be charging money for. It's a correlation, right? I'm not making this up. I don't really think it's fundamentally a problem. I just respect the Skyrim mod devs far, far more. I can't help but respect people that are artists just for the art and nothing more, even if there's certain mods that I would pay top dollar for because they're just that good and way more creative than anything that's been made for Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, the culture isn't the only way that modding differs from Skyrim. The actual process of modding is not something I would wish on my worst enemy. In fact, when Barack Obama sent in that team to take out Osama bin Laden, they should instead have locked him in a room for a couple of years and then forced him to get a modded GTA 5 working. Because my god, what a nightmare I had. Okay, so look, firstly, the main reason why this was such a bitch for me is because I decided to do this modding just as a brand new update was coming out for Grand Theft Auto 5, which is automatic and completely fucks all of your mods into oblivion, because you then need an update for Scripthook 5, which is the thing that makes mods work. However, the next thing after that is what did me in. I was fighting for my life after this update. Once Scripthook was updated, every mod I installed worked, mainly. However, I couldn't get my EMB working, specifically EMB series. When you install EMB series, if you're unaware, you get a little bit of licensing information in the top left-hand corner to tell you it's active. Without it, QuantV and other mods like it won't work in the way that they're supposed to. The sky just went bright red, it looked fucking ridiculous. I reinstalled it about 15 times thinking I was missing some sort of crucial step. I had to be, right? But I wasn't. I was doing it absolutely perfectly. So I did what any struggling modder would do, and I reached out on a forum. Something I don't think I've done in 15 years. And I asked on the forum, please help me, I can't do this, I'm considering blowing my fucking brains out in front of my wife, just help me, please. And luckily, one man did. He simply said to change the Windows compatibility setting to Windows 7. And lo and behold, it fucking worked. It fucking worked. And that was it. Everything was finally coming up LazerzZ. And it was about time for us to finally begin our journey into Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, this is a big game. There's a lot to cover, and I'm going to try to do my utmost to condense this script where possible. The main reason being, I want to allocate more of my time this year to a big video on Red Dead Redemption 2, which I want to take chapter by chapter, so I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to be talking more in broad strokes, but hopefully without losing any of the depth that would be in an even longer video. Alright, I think that's it. Let's bounce.
Bounce. We're bouncing now. Is that what we're doing? Jesus fucking Christ.
The basis of Grand Theft Auto 5 is its three protagonists, Franklin, Michael, and Trevor. All different perspectives on a similar way of life, and they use them in tandem with the fourth main character of the game to explore particular themes and concepts in a way that only Grand Theft Auto does. The fourth main character, of course, being the open world of San Andreas, Los Santos, and Blaine County. This might be heresy, actually I'm sure that it is heresy, but I've never actually played through GTA San Andreas. I've touched it, I've played the opening few missions, but I've never actually finished it before, so I genuinely don't know what that game is about. I've never seen the entire map, I have no ties to it, so to me, Grand Theft Auto 5 is the only San Andreas I'm familiar with, so I can't really say how it lives up to the original depiction from 2004. I do want to play it at some point. I mean, I own all of those original games on Steam. One day, man, I swear. I'm realizing while editing that actually, the original San Andreas was the city of San Andreas from Grand Theft Auto 1 in 1997. If you didn't know, now you do. I'm just there to help. In GTA 5, though, you don't have the additional areas that were part of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. You only have Los Santos and Blaine County. There's no inclusion of San Fierro or Las Venturas, and while this game covers less real-life ground, the ground it does cover is larger than anything GTA had done previously in its scaling of Los Santos and Blaine County. One of the weirdest things about GTA maps, and it struck me hard when reflecting on this game, is that they're always fucking islands with nothing for miles. So like, what does America even look like in this universe? Is San Andreas really in the middle of the ocean, and then miles and miles away you have this mainland America, and also Vice City and Liberty City are also both islands in the middle of the ocean too, for some reason? It's so fucking mental to think about how it looks. I even drew this little diagram in my notes. This isn't to scale, by the way. I suppose in reality they are connected to the other states, like real life, but the game doesn't depict that because, I don't know, it's a video game. It's odd though, because Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead 2 both don't do this. Maybe it's down to the fact that you don't have planes and helicopters in Red Dead, and so in GTA it's just easier to build your map to be an island, so you don't need to have invisible walls or anything. Even still, I've never really thought about it before, but now I can't stop. It's melting my brain thinking about how this version of America functions. None of it makes any sense, especially seeing it from above like this. Like, how is this a real place that is populated and exists in the same capacity that Los Angeles is in real life? This is the stuff that keeps me up at night. That and my crippling anxiety that I'll never be good enough. Michael, Trevor, and Franklin allow us as the player to engage with different aspects of the core GTA experience. class. The character we switch to changes the way that we view the world, and often how we interact with it, which I found fascinating as I watched back my footage. As Michael or Franklin, I'd often help out the people on the side of the street asking me to. As Trevor, I just mow them down subconsciously. Which is, that's sort of a bit... But that is one of the things I find interesting about the franchise of Grand Theft Auto. It's always been under fire from mainstream news outlets for the fact that it's promoting this vulgar power fantasy of being able to do whatever the hell you want, mounting the curb and watching people fly off your bonnet, gunning down a group of people in a public space, blowing up cars simply because you feel like it, and the classic routine of getting 5 stars and seeing how long you can hold out before you meet your end. I don't find that GTA has violence any worse than most of the games that are on the market. I mean, look at stuff like Resident Evil or Doom. It's not the violence and brutality that made GTA infamous, it's the way it uses it. I said earlier, Grand Theft Auto might be the perfect form of escapism, and that's because of how it implements its gameplay into the world. Los Santos and the countryside surrounding it feels like a real place. It has dense traffic, people who will speak to you and who you can speak to. It has real highways that connect to each other, and roads and signage, stores and radio stations, and a mobile phone with internet access. It's got beaches full of girls laying out on the sand, cops patrolling the streets, animals like dogs and cats and rabbits in the city, as well as deer and wildcats out in the countryside. You can find people out in the mountains hiking, bike riding, working out at a gym. GTA works because the world you are in is so damn believable as a real place, and it uses that familiarity to build a power fantasy where you can strike back against the reality of normal life and do the things you wish you could, where there's a lack of consequence to your actions. And that's why the news and older generations are so mad, because it's not as simple as grinding demons to dust or playing a part in a depiction of World War II. It's a violent sandbox in a world that resembles our own, that's just twisted and satirical enough that we don't feel too bad about doing the things we do in GTA. Where something like Saints Row plays heavily into the absurdity of its world and concept, sometimes to a fault, Grand Theft Auto says, what if you didn't have to worry about consequences in a world that is so close to real life? They work to reinforce norms in such small ways to build this up. Things like being able to take Chop for a walk as Franklin, or the way Trevor gets on this bike in a stranger mission, which, by the way, looks so good. Like, this animation is one of my favorites, it just looks so convincing. When you switch characters, sometimes they'll be just doing normal shit, like Franklin being stuck in traffic, or Michael watching a movie, and you just say, fuck it, I'm in control now. Let's do whatever we want. And of course, we all know having this power fantasy doesn't mean we will or even want to do these things in real life. It's not about wishing I could gun down innocent people in reality. It's about living in a world where you have ultimate control. It's not just that there are no consequences for your actions, it's that there are no consequences for anything. I will say though, earlier this week, I was driving home from getting a haircut, and I was stuck in traffic, listening to some music, and after playing this game for hours every day, I did for a split second almost instinctively dart my car into a field to skip the traffic. I didn't do it, obviously. I realised right away it was mental that my brain went there, but I think it goes to show that we've all thought about that before. I could skip this traffic if I just mounted the pavement and ploughed into that group of people. Obviously, you wouldn't do it, you wouldn't even want to, but in GTA, nothing matters, and you simply can. It's why I think it's crazy when people ask if GTA 6 will take some of the realism from Red Dead Redemption 2. Absolutely not, if they're doing the game justice. Red Dead is a world built on consequence. I mean, that's the whole theme of both stories, the consequences of your actions catching up with you. But not just that, it's baked into the gameplay. You can't go wild and get 5 stars in Red Dead Redemption. Well, you can, but you shouldn't, because you end up with a bounty, your reputation is lowered, consequences are everywhere. That's the DNA of those games. GTA, however, is the complete opposite, and I think that's why I love the story of this one so much upon a replay. It's not perfect, but it uses the concept and the crux of GTA's main appeal to tell a story about that very concept, with 3 characters that just embody the themes. But we'll talk about that a little bit later, just put a pin in that for now. We'll take the pin out later. That's a Bolt reference. The city itself as a video game space is equally as great as it isn't. I think what they were going for with this world is perfected by how you interact with the world in Red Dead Redemption 2. I think it's even eclipsed by its predecessor, Grand Theft Auto 4. Los Santos and Blaine County look great. I mean, I said earlier the way the roads are laid out, the city centre compared to the outskirts, the realism and how the city is mapped is maybe the greatest in any game ever made. It's made to function like a place that exists from the minuscule to the major, and driving out to the country simply has immaculate vibes. It's not a huge map by today's standards, but it always feels like a road trip when you have to head out to Sandy Shores or Palito Bay, taking the highway and joining the traffic, seeing the city disappear into a forest and into a desert, across bridges and through tunnels, and if you're lucky, sometimes the game just says fuck it and you get to witness some true bouts of chaos. Yep, that's... Oh, he's fucked. Right, okay. Oh, that's not good. Oh. Fuck's sake. And look, in those instances, the world is a joy to traverse. It feels like a totally legitimate, real place, and the small rockstar touches like your character head bobbing to music, or the stars being more visible when away from the light pollution of the city just adds to it. However, I can't help but feel there's just something lacking. It feels like the game never wants you to interact with the world, only does it let you when it deems necessary. A random encounter, or a mission, or a stranger activity. Nothing that you can actively choose to do just randomly in the world, which is why I drew the comparison to Red Dead Redemption 2, a game where you never feel like you haven't chosen something, or accidentally stumbled across something. It's a world that exists for you to interact with. GTA 5 isn't really. It feels like a backdrop, a very convincing backdrop, but still a backdrop. And obviously part of that is due to the hardware limitations and what they were working with. They decided to prioritize what they felt was necessary for this game world, and I can appreciate that. But it does still feel lacking in a sense 10 years later. You can rarely enter buildings outside of specific contexts, and even when you can, there isn't much to really do in them. The wildlife serves no purpose outside of a hunting mission chain with Trevor, and the people are ultimately just random, mindless NPCs for you to kill or ignore. It's why I often enjoyed being in Blaine County more than Los Santos, because the lack of city made the emptiness and lack of interactivity at least feel more immersive. But when that same feel exists for a major city space, it starts to feel a bit lacking. A huge part of this as well is how GTA 4 handled its world. Liberty City felt interactive in such a meaningful way. There were plenty of buildings you could enter, tons of different activities to do with your friends, and the world just felt that little bit more tactile. I often found myself driving past buildings in 5 and thinking, man, I wish I could explore here, jump out of my car and see what's happening in that church or in that store. Palito Bay itself is a great example of that feeling. It's just such a cool looking little town space that you can do pretty much nothing in. Just look at it and go, yeah, I wish I could do something with this location. In 4 and Red Dead, I often spend a lot of time outside of missions just doing stuff, existing in the world. In Red Dead Redemption especially. You create your own goals and you aim for them. In GTA 5, if I wanted things to do, I had to play the missions, because outside of those, there isn't much you can really do. Hanging out with friends is one thing though, it offers some nice extra dialogue between whichever characters you're hanging out with, and you can go and do stuff. Despite there being a similar amount of things to do as in 4, I still feel for some reason that 4 makes hanging out with people feel better. In 4, you had bowling, darts, drinking, the strip club, comedy club, pool, and in the DLCs they added air hockey, golf, and arm wrestling. In 5, you can go drink, strip club, play darts, golf, tennis, or watch a movie, but there's still something that feels off. I wish I had a more specific critique, I really do, but in 4, it felt fun to call up Roman or Little Jacob and go do something. In 5, it always felt a little bit wrong and weird. I never felt right about going to play darts with Lamar or taking Franklin to play golf as Michael. Going to the movies was the best one I did, not because of the movie, but because after it was over, the police decided to simply start shooting Franklin for no reason. Which is about par for the course. There is a lot to do in GTA 5, a lot more than there was in 4, but for some reason, I just didn't want to do any of it. I don't care about triathlons or base jumping or repossessing vehicles or doing drug runs for money, I just didn't feel it. Maybe it has something to do with the amount of money you're granted by the story. By the time you unlock most of these optional mission types, you got enough money that you don't really need to be doing any of these things, and they don't really contextualize the owning of businesses in any way that feels meaningful. When you play Saints Row, and not the bad one, don't make me revisit that, please. The good one, your goal is to dominate the city, to destroy rival gangs, to own Stillwater, and so I love buying places, making more money, driving the gangs out, seeing the map turn purple. In GTA 5, I don't care about owning businesses. It just never drew me in or made me want to engage. It felt like tedium, and that's a bit of a shame. I think the online contextualizes things better from at least what I've seen. You always want more money for better clothes, apartments, cars, to grow an in-depth business and expand. It works as motivation because that's the whole crux of the multiplayer. In the single player, it just doesn't contextualize these things enough because none of it really exists or matters. Sure, you can buy new clothes, which has a ton of depth with plenty of unique options for each character, which I had a lot of fun messing around with, but you can't buy new apartments. You have limited access to vehicles, and the game will just substitute the new car you bought for the default one anyway, causing the car you bought to simply disappear, making even spending your money pointless. Cars, the main commodity of the game, can't be used without fear of a mission forcing you to leave it behind and then the game just despawning it. The fact you can't change a character's personal vehicle is simply madness to me. By the end, I simply took to saving cars in menu and spawning them when I needed to instead of using the one that the game would spawn because I wanted to feel a sense of monetary progression, not to use the same goddamn mid-obey tailgater every single fucking time. But that aside, the driving of cars or flying of planes feels great and enhances the core power fantasy as you go about the large world. One of the elements people often forget as well is that you can go underwater in this game, and it's actually fucking terrifying. This shit triggered my thalassophobia bad, like I was back in fucking Subnautica. I was waiting for one of those Leviathan Reapers to come out of the darkness and just ruin my whole day. There's not much to actually do underwater though. It's sort of like the rest of GTA 5's world. It's set dressing. What isn't set dressing though are the stranger missions. They're all unique and interesting and often very funny, even if they do exist to pretty much just contextualize collectibles, like finding celebrity souvenirs for this old couple, which I don't really understand why Trevor would do that, or grabbing weed stashes for Barry, which I also don't really know why Franklin would be doing this either. I think the best ones are the one-off stories with interesting characters that just make you laugh. The absurdity is dialed up in these missions, and it's just a nice bit of light-hearted, dumb fun and an excuse to shoot things, which is really GTA's whole MO anyway. You get these moments with the exercising lady who encounters all three characters.
Stop looking at my ass!
I wasn't looking at your ass.
I know. No one ever does.
Or the moment when Franklin can talk to a dog.
What's that? You said a man is stuck in a tree. And he needs my help? Part of you would rather leave him there because he's a bit of a dick.
But then the dog vanishes and he was never there, like this universe's mysterious stranger.
Man, that's a cool-ass dog you got, homie.
What dog?
That dog that saved your ass, man.
Dude, I have no idea what you're talking about right now.
What the fuck?
The weird and the wonderful are explored through these missions and as a means to contextualize what are essentially menial tasks. I think it works well in the larger scope of what the world is trying to convey to the player to make the acts you commit feel reasonable as an extension of the main story. It might feel somewhat dated structurally by 2023 standards, far less organic and natural than how maybe Red Dead Redemption 2 handles it, but that doesn't make it intrinsically bad, and it works for what the game is trying to do. I think the biggest flaw, though, comes in the form of Rockstar's fundamental game design. I know people have bashed how Rockstar make their games from here to Kingdom Come, but it's not for no reason. I think it's clear for all to see that Rockstar, despite being able to pull off very well-structured and action-packed set pieces and combat sequences, still end up falling back on a dated structure of drive to a letter on map, watch cutscene, drive to location of mission, do mission, watch cutscene, end mission, rinse and repeat, and after 10 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours, it does start to wear you thin a little bit. So much of this game is driving to a mission marker or objective, or tailing a plane for 10 minutes, or sitting parked up on the sidewalk while you read number plates to eventually tail a guy and then tail him again to then say, "Hey bro, we need your ID," to then return to your car and drive back to the place you started from. There's way too much dicking around constantly with such little room for fuck-ups that you get such strange mission failed messages sometimes. I want to be able to experiment in a sandbox. It feels like the main missions are completely at odds with the design philosophy of the actual world itself, when outside of missions you can just... Inside missions, you have to play by a very precise set of rules to complete the missions the exact way Rockstar wants you to, and while I think this works in Red Dead Redemption, or at least it does a lot more, I feel like it doesn't really in GTA. It's always been an issue, the insane rails they put on you whenever you start a mission. You should be able to fail a tail and have it turn into a chase. You should be able to get things wrong but not have the game just restart you. You should be able to improvise and decide how you want to engage with the situation for yourself. This is something they try to remedy with heist setups. Heists are a huge part of GTA 5, so important that they didn't add them to online for almost 2 years. Once you've decided a method for your heist, you have to get it set up, go out and get the necessary resources. When this happens, you're pretty much free to do it however you want to do it. There are no rules so long as you get the thing that you need, and that's good. It means you can use the sandbox to complete the mission, in theory. In practice, it's just like stealing a truck or a van or some cars, which sort of makes it shallow and just adds to the tedium. It would be nice to have more specific objectives that you decide how to complete in whatever way you feel is best, like, I don't know, acquiring some blueprints. How are you gonna do it? Maybe you can tail the guy who has them. Maybe you can storm into a building and shoot everyone inside. I don't know, I'm just throwing ideas out there. I just feel there are ways to go about this that can make the overall experience more fun and play into the strengths of GTA Sandbox. That said though, the heists themselves are the highlight of this game. There are 6 across the game, ranging in scope and scale, and offer a wide range of options. You have obviously the different approaches you can take, but from that you also get to pick your own crew made up of people you find in the world, one of which is Patrick McGreary from GTA 4. You rob the bank with him in that game. I ended up taking him on all of my heists once I found him. You can even hear him tell stories to the crew during the mission.
What is interesting is my biggest job, the Bank of Liberty City.
Ah, shit, yeah. I heard you were part of the crew that took that down.
I ran the crew. It was me, my brother Derek, God rest his soul, my pal Michael, God rest his soul, and another boy, Nico, who's probably dead too.
They're all dead. Must have been jinxed, huh?
All I know is I live to tell the tale. We went in, my pal Michael gets shot. I take down the hero who did it, then we blow the vault, take the money, and meet half the LCPD coming out. The cops are outside, they're in the street, down the alleys, they're in the subway. We just keep moving and shooting, moving and shooting. Climbed out the subway, found a car, and we were away.
Sounds like you were the right guy to bring along on this. Let's just hope we ain't jinxed as well.
And that's the same for all of your heist crew. They feel like actual people, and that's quite cool. Your choices for crew also genuinely affect how the heists go down, how smoothly you pull them off, and how big your take and cut is. I think it's a fucking great system that offers tons of replay value, and the set pieces themselves are incredible. From parachuting onto the skyscraper and fighting your way through the building and rappelling off the side, to riding bikes through sewage tunnels, to fighting your way through tons of dirty cops in a suit of armor with a minigun. This shit slaps, it's just great fun. When GTA 5 is firing on all cylinders, it has some of the greatest missions in all of Grand Theft Auto, and the balancing of all 3 characters during missions with the ability to dynamically switch between them is hugely beneficial to the feeling of creating something action-packed. The final mission in the factory, where you're switching all the time, is particularly memorable, a piece of story and gameplay synergy, or the mission where you retrieve the dude for the FIB, rappelling down the building and using Franklin as a sniper while Trevor flies the chopper. It's brilliant shit. Overall, it's a bit of a mixed bag that I overall had a lot of fun with. I know I spent a lot of time here criticizing gameplay and mission structure and world, but that's not to mean I think it's bad, quite the opposite. I had a blast. The fact this game is 10 years old is honestly a little bit unbelievable at times, and that's without even mentioning the tiny details like the sweat that will accumulate the more you run, or the way flip-flops, well, flip-flop, the way NPCs take pictures of your nice cars, or the actual cuts and bruises from taking damage. The details in GTA 5 is insane, and Rockstar push those boundaries every time they make a game, which makes GTA 6 a very exciting prospect. But the thing about GTA 5 that makes it all worthwhile and keeps the game turning is the story it tells, its characters and the themes they try to explore, and while not perfect, I found a lot more depth this time around than I did when I was 16, partly because I was 16 and my brain was trained to think about more important things in life like trigonometry, which comes in handy almost every day. Sarcasm and satire are major components of the Grand Theft Auto series. It's ultimately the point. GTA is a social commentary on American society through various lenses. That's the point of the stories they tell, because well, a story has to have a point, otherwise you've just got events in an order for no reason. The first thing you learn about stories as a young, impressionable child is to understand the moral, whether through nursery rhymes, fairy tales, or if you're severely unfortunate, Genesis 34 of the Bible. You're taught to interpret the morals of a story partly so you can learn from them as a child and assimilate the important message, but also to hone your literacy skills, which sadly a lot of people don't develop past the age of 6. The point of Grand Theft Auto stories are to be a commentary on aspects of American society. GTA 4, like I said before, explores the notion of the American dream through the lens of someone not native to the country, someone who's been through some awful, awful shit, trauma, and poverty. Nico's cousin Roman has told him about all these wonderful things in America, buying into the bullshit, and Nico comes over to find it was all a complete farce, and attains success and wealth by involving himself in a life of crime as he once did back in his home country. America isn't different. It's not better. It's just damn good at hiding the corruption. By the end of the game, Nico has money. He's achieved that dream through means that make him feel empty, hollow, and alone. His past comes back to haunt him and he succumbs to a cycle of pain. The focus and theme of the game all revolves around the concept that America is broken. It's a societal structure that seeks to screw over anyone who isn't born wealthy or willing to get their hands dirty. They use minorities and foreigners to exemplify this concept, and Nico is right at the center of all that. Where 4 is the exploration of this concept, GTA 5 almost works as an aftermath. 10 years after the fact, we pick up with 3 characters all at different points in their life with different perspectives on that concept. Franklin works as a pretty strong analog to Nico, while Michael and Trevor work as mentors, so to speak, on polar opposites of a spectrum. Now, I've been torn on this game's story since I finished it. I've been mulling it over and I've gone back and forth arguing with myself as I've tried to write drafts for this part of the script. GTA 5 is nowhere near as focused as 4 is. It doesn't have anywhere near as clear of a message, but that doesn't mean it lacks one or fails to explore anything, and being less focused doesn't automatically make a thing worse. It just makes it a lot more difficult to analyze or boil down to a basic premise like I did with GTA 4. I both admire and loathe this about the game. It's tough. So I asked myself, what is Grand Theft Auto 5 about? Not the plot events, that's obvious, but what is the story actually about? What is it trying to say? And my honest answer was initially that I'm not sure. If you've ever analyzed any sort of text, you're probably with me when I say the feeling of something clicking in your brain is one of the most satisfying things that can happen. When every line of dialogue or every scene seems to link back to this one premise or theme, it's like fucking Christmas. One of my favorite examples of that is God of War 2018, the way every aspect of the game, from narrative to the game design and fundamental philosophy and its DNA, plays into the few central themes. It gives me goosebumps. That video I made on it was one of my favorites to make. GTA 5 doesn't have that, at least not that I can tell. Since playing, I've had tons of video essays for it pop up on the YouTube homepage, and I've almost clicked on them to see if anyone else has a concrete interpretation, but I can't do that for fear of agreeing and then regurgitating their video in my video. I want my conclusions to be mine. I'll watch all those videos once this script is written. I think the reason I'm finding it hard to land on a point of the story, a point of the game, is there are so many themes. So many I'd be hard-pressed to actually call them themes all of the time. They're ideas, stances of varying positions on the political and societal spectrum that I can't decipher what this game believes in. To name just a few of the stances this game takes over its runtime, we have critiques on capitalism, a lot, police brutality, Hollywood, the elites, a funny satire on border control and the deporting of immigrants, extreme feminism, reality TV, institutionalized racism, gang culture, social media obsession and the extension of celebrity obsession, family values, government and military corruption. I could go on, but I think this makes my point. The game doesn't land on anything. They seemingly put all of these ideas into a hat and plucked them out at random points in the game with almost no rhyme or reason, and it makes it difficult to say that Grand Theft Auto 5 stands for anything at all, has any sort of through line or message. I will say though, I did laugh at this bit.
Some of the government, some of it is pretty corrupt.
And I also do like how the three protagonists here mirror the three wise monkeys and see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, turning a blind eye to the corruption of the government if it means they can continue their white-collar criminal businesses. Is it technically white-collar if they're killing people? It's not really, is it? I don't know. It's iffy. But I do think this line is actually instrumental in breaking through to an idea. Is the game doing this game of pin the ideal on the donkey on purpose? Because in aiming for the concept of everything is up for our funny satire, you almost shoot yourself in the foot and become a parody of yourself. But is that a mistake, or is that done on purpose? Is GTA 5 trying to be like postmodernism? Is it like ironic satire? Am I doing 4D chess right now? Yes, I am. One thing I did consider, and it was while I was sitting in Michael's house watching TV, is that GTA 5 is a hell of a lot like a TV show, isn't it? I mean, Rockstar have always done episodic storytelling. Their mission structure leans so heavily on it. Look at Red Dead Redemption 1. You've got McFarlane's Ranch episode, then the Armadillo episode, and then the Fort Mercer episode, then the Mexico episode, and then the Blackwater episode, and so on and so forth. They feel like separate arcs that once put together in a structure convey something larger. GTA 5 does this too, but I feel to an even greater extent, and I think maybe that's the point. GTA 5 is supposed to be viewed as several arcs, all of which exploring a different thing to do a satire of. Sometimes they intersect, but that might be the attempt here. That we have a storyline about Franklin and his best friend Lamar, someone dedicated to the hood, and a kid wanting to spread his wings to not be fucked by the system that keeps him grounded. A story about Michael after a life of crime. He wants to make movies, and he gets there by, you guessed it, committing more crime, because Hollywood is corrupt, baby, and Michael is a fucking hypocrite. An episode about Trevor and his pushback on the establishment, both in the real world and the criminal underworld, with his battle against the Lost MC, O'Neills, and the Chinese. If you view GTA 5 through this lens, boy, do you get a shit ton more depth, because then it's less of a flip-flopping array of confused themes, and more of a deliberate switching of gears. And throughout all of this, we do explore the central crux of the game. Michael faked his death, screwed over his friend, made a deal with a corrupt government that comes back to bite him, and he ropes in Franklin and Trevor as well. It's a story that pushes and pulls, that explores redemption, condemnation, and loyalty, and uses different themes across the game to explore these characters to ultimately make the climax satisfying. And look, don't get me wrong, amongst these mini-arcs, they do often use jokes that seemingly mean nothing. Trevor doing a Chinese voice to mock the Chinese man.
Of course! Sorry I had to cut out!
What does this say about anything? Or when Michael starts calling Trevor a hipster.
You are a hipster! What? You're a hipster. I hate hipsters. Classic hipster denial.
First of all, why do either of these guys know what that means? But second of all, how is this a real conversation these characters are having? GTA 5 often falls back on making something funny for seemingly no reason, and for me it tends to fall flat. Which plays into the idea of 5 being a parody of GTA that fails to be earnest when maybe it needs to be.
You know, shit just falls on top of me. My life sucks right now, and I don't know what to do except I want to say I love you and hug it out, but all that wimpy shit is just, well, I'd say gay, but I have some friends who are gay, so that's not cool anymore, and the ones that I don't really like, it's not because they're gay, so lame, all right? You are just a lame and angry psycho sometimes. You do bad shit and things. I don't know if I love you, and I'm pretty sure I hate you a little bit, but I'm just so fucking upset that we can't even see each other. And you're just a drunk, lame dad.
You know what? That might just be the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me.
So will you buy me a car?
What?
I mean, what did we get from this scene other than it's showing Michael's kids suck, just like him, which we already know. Other than that, we get nothing. It's just a funny moment that didn't make me laugh. But that doesn't mean it's never genuine in its presentation of themes. Okay, so as for our 3 characters, let's take a look at all of them individually before we jump to the ending of the game, and I can sort of say what I think the entire point is. All three have their time in the spotlight, and all three feel organic and natural to the story unfolding. Starting with Michael in North Yankton and then jumping to 9 years later to introduce us to Franklin, who is our grounding character, is a great way of opening your game. To jump then from this to introducing Michael in a mission that links the two works wonders, as now we have our two characters to explore. I don't think they thought that camera switch out. Having these two take the reins for the first quarter of the game is such a great way to ease us in. After the first heist, switching us to a brand new perspective all the way out in a totally different area of the map is a powerful way to showcase, for one, the size of the map, but also the disparity between Michael and Franklin's lives and that of where Trevor's ended up. Introducing him by having him kill the protagonist of The Lost and Damned, a supremely tough character in that DLC, is such a good way to establish immediately the type of character he is, the way he's not here to mess around, and also to make him memorable off the bat. The game takes us away from our two central protagonists that we've been playing for the last 5 or 6 hours, and they really earn it. I never felt annoyed or that I wanted to return to Michael or Franklin. I was content to learn about Trevor because of how they introduced him and his situation. But that's a general overview. Let's get a bit specific about each of them. Michael is a hypocrite. I said it earlier, but that's the point of his character, I feel. He hates his life, he hates what he did, but he continues to do what he did, and he continues to raise his kids to be just like he is, while also condemning them for it. He takes on Franklin and sees him as the son he wishes he had, but never could have because he's an incompetent father. I wish I cared more about Michael's arc with his family, if you can even call it an arc. All it really boils down to is him interfering in their lives for what I would argue were pretty good reasons. Either Tracy being an idiot and making bad decisions, or Jimmy being a lazy son of a bitch. His wife also cheats on him repeatedly. And sure, Michael is a jerk too, but his family also sucks. They leave him for a while and then later on they all come back together because they all miss each other. Nothing changes. None of them change. They just decide to put up with each other again. After a screaming match in the therapist's office, Michael and Amanda agree to try things again. And, like, what does this mean? What is it even saying? That they're terrible people and they just have to get used to each other? I don't really know. Michael appears almost like what would be in another GTA game one of the NPCs you get missions from. He's absurd and he's made fun of by the game itself. Michael believes his view of the world is the correct view and that nobody else in the entire world gets it like he does, which is how he justifies the awful shit he says and does. He's a fucking narcissist, and it makes him the most unlikable character of the three, but that's also the point. Because despite being the most unlikable, he's also the most measured and capable and good at what he does. So for us as the player, it becomes balanced, and it does the same for Franklin, who looks up to Michael as a mentor. Franklin, like we said before, is disillusioned by the hood. He's not like Lamar, and of course it's partly his own sense of self, but on top of that, it's because of Tanisha, his ex-girlfriend, who has recently been engaged to a doctor, someone with a legitimate, successful job. Franklin seeks to compete, to become successful too. He's not content with boosting cars for Simeon. He's not content with doing jobs for Stretch, where he has to pay dividends to the OGs. It's just another pyramid scheme built to push him down, and he wants to fly.
Man, fuck the OGs then. You know what I'm saying? This ain't no motherfucking pyramid scheme.
Franklin is the straight man to our more absurd characters. Like I said, he's our Nico. And over the course of the game, he has to grapple with his goals and aspirations and his loyalties, something we see come to a head in the Lamar rescue towards the end, which is also teed up by Tanisha herself, which I don't think is a coincidence. I think it's important that it's her who tells him. He also says gay rights.
Man, who gives a fuck if he's gay or not, man? The man is not married. It's his business. Leave motherfuckers alone.
I just know people would call this game woke if it came out today, dude. There are so many moments.
It's bullshit. Go to college. Then you're gonna rip people off and get paid for it. It's called capitalism.
Franklin, ultimately though, is forced to choose between Michael and Trevor after a story full of push and pull, with him at the center. Trevor is a well-justified contextualization for the power fantasy that is Grand Theft Auto, but he is also the most complex character in this game by a long shot. I didn't expect this before replaying. I remember Trevor as the silly character that does crazy stuff, and well, yeah, sure, that still is true. Him waking up passed out on an island with dead guys all around is super quirky and random XD, but he also has an insane amount of depth. Trevor clearly has had a complicated past. His upbringing wasn't good. That's clear from what we learn about his mother. He's incredibly insecure, as we see at multiple points across the game. One of the major ones being this scene with Franklin.
What's up, homie, huh?
Sorry, by the way, it was raining here. Just pretend it sets the mood better.
Oh, is that how you act, huh? When a friend makes a mistake, huh?
No,
Really?
man.
Oh,
No.
what? Oh, so what? It's just me getting hurt? Is that funny?
No,
huh?
man.
Oh, fuck you! I'm gonna put you in the fucking ground. You laugh at me again.
Man, calm down.
I have met a lot of assholes in my life, but you, you're not long for this world. And this is the way you fucking act. You little jumped-up motherfucker!
It was funny at first, man. I made a mistake. Unfortunately, man, you failed. It was fun, all right? I apologize.
I accept your apology. Okay? All right, so let's hug it out. Right? Yeah, I fucking gotcha! Oh, fuck, no, I'm not funny. Fucking asshole! Oh, fuck, I had a difficult childhood.
Damn, man, you all right?
This is genuinely such a good scene. Is it funny? Yeah, sure, it's funny. But also, there's something about this that makes me feel so sad. Trevor has never had a true friend other than Michael, and he doesn't know how to handle the banter that Franklin threw at him. It's normal to laugh when your friend slips and falls over. It's all in good fun, but Trevor doesn't get that, and when he realizes, he's too stubborn to laugh along and just doubles down, getting mad at himself and taking it out on Franklin and then the random guy walking past. We learn even more about his past in the conversation he has with Wade on the way to Los Santos. Trevor was a bright young kid, but because of his mental issues from his upbringing, he wasn't allowed to ultimately fly in the military, and it sent him into a depressive spiral which Michael took advantage of and used him for his own gains. We see plenty of rage-filled moments with Trevor, like with Floyd and Deborah or the infamous torture scene, but equally, we see the opposite too. Like in the storyline where he kidnaps Martin Madrazo's wife and he genuinely falls in love, or directly after the torture scene where he lets the victim go and drives him to the airport, which speaks to another aspect of Trevor, his loyalty. He did what had to be done because Michael needed him to, as part of his deal to free him from the obligations of the FIB. Trevor is strangely, despite being the most dangerous, the most honest and trustworthy of the three characters, which makes him a strong friend. There's so much that can be said about Trevor. He has so many layers, and maybe one day that could be a video on its own. But this is a good basis. This brings us to the core of the game, the themes that remain strong throughout. And the first is the criticisms of the US government's overreach and corruption. It's not done subtly, but it certainly is done. Steve Haynes uses Michael, Trevor, and Franklin to deal with situations for the FIB that would in other circumstances be criminal acts. Some of the most GTA stuff you do in main missions is carried out for the FIB or Devin Weston, a contact of Haynes. The torture mission, political assassinations, literally Grand Theft Auto are all missions for these characters. The game is saying very, very overtly, the US government are no better than criminals. Actually, they're worse than criminals because they aren't even honest about what they do. There's no honor or camaraderie. It's all done in the shadows while men like Steve Haynes are handed medals for stuff they didn't even get their hands dirty for. The second is this sense of moral righteousness and thereby hypocrisy, which, while is strongest with Michael, it does to an extent infect all of our main characters. Michael is a piece of shit. What he did in North Yankton was wrong, and that's dog behavior to betray your boys like that, and Trevor is right for being mad. But at the same time, Trevor's no better either. We've seen how he treats Wade and Ron, the way he killed Floyd who helped on the Merryweather job. Trevor has no problems mistreating and killing his allies. For Trevor, it's less about what Michael did, but more about how he did it, the lies and manipulation. All of this comes to a head in the return to North Yankton, in which Michael and Trevor come head to head and have to confront the truth of the past. The thing with this is how it's just sort of wrapped up. Neither kills the other, and then the Chinese show up for Trevor. Michael gets kidnapped because they think he's Trevor's boyfriend, which is a very funny joke that definitely still made me laugh the 12th time they said it. Franklin saves Michael in the slaughterhouse, and well, there you go, problem solved. Trevor and Michael still argue a bit, but ultimately never really comes up again in any sort of tangible way that's like an actual conflict in the narrative, and it ends up not mattering. Michael is never truly forced to confront what he did, and that it was actually really bad of him to do that to Trevor, because it was really bad for him to do that to Trevor, and poor old Brad. The game uses this though to slowly pit all three characters against each other. Trevor and Michael because of the deal Michael made that ended up killing Brad, Franklin and Trevor because of Trevor's insecurities and the mirroring of manipulation by Michael toward Franklin that Trevor knows all too well, and Franklin and Michael because by the end Franklin is stuck boosting cars like he always was for Simeon at the very start. Michael has taken Franklin for a ride. These three guys are pitted against each other by a system that has used them, which ultimately is what makes Option C work so well as the ending. Franklin decides to say fuck it to the system that fucked over Trevor and kept Michael tied up. Franklin won't make the same mistakes, and in doing so, he gives Michael and Trevor a second chance. Each of the characters track down major figureheads that are symbols of consequence for our main characters. Wei Cheng for Trevor, Stretch for Franklin, and Haynes for Michael, with Devin Weston being the icing on the cake. I particularly love how each character kills not their own rival, but one of the other protagonist's rivals, showing the true synergy between them at this stage. I think that's a really nice touch. What this does though is bring us full circle back to the crux of GTA, the lack of consequence. This isn't Red Dead, this is Grand Theft Auto. You can throw a sticky bomb at Stretch and he's dealt with, Franklin's free. You can snipe Steve Haynes and Michael no longer has obligation. You can throw a grenade at Wei Cheng and Trevor has full reign of the businesses in Blaine County. And you can lock Devin Weston in the boot of a car and push it off a cliff into the ocean to be totally free of any remaining shackles and ride off into the sunset, consequence free, because that's the promise of GTA, the power fantasy, zero consequences and the non-necessity of an arc. The game spends the entire runtime exploring the consequences of what happened 10 years ago to ultimately land on the idea that it doesn't matter as long as you have friends. It's a regular old JRPG. I have no idea if this is actually the point, but I like it. I really think they use the dissonance of gameplay and story to actually come to a harmonious crescendo by the end. And that's GTA 5. Look, this game is far from perfect. Even with everything I gave props to, the game still does have a hell of a crisis of self. The messaging can be a little bit all over the place, and it feels incredibly non-committal in so many avenues, but that doesn't mean it's bad or lacks substance or doesn't have anything to say, because it does. Through the bullshit and sometimes unnecessary jokes, the game is trying to say things. The game can come across as unsatisfactory because our protagonists don't have arcs. They don't really learn anything other than they can do whatever they want if they work together as a team, and that second chances are always possible if you're loyal. But they don't have to learn anything. While there are protagonists, they aren't heroes. They aren't Arthur Morgan or John Marston. They aren't even Nico Bellic. Ultimately, we shouldn't be rooting for these people. They are pieces of shit, and they have done terrible things to bad people and to good people and innocents. They are not redeemable. Even Franklin, who's the most redeemable of the three, ultimately commits himself to the same life that they led 10 years ago, just with a touch more loyalty. This game isn't really so much of a set of character arcs as much as it's a set of character studies and societal commentary. And while it won't ever be my favorite Rockstar game or my favorite Grand Theft Auto, I think it's severely underappreciated in a lot of ways, despite being universally the most famous game of all time, and in a lot of ways, despite GTA 5 not being necessarily revolutionary or game-changing to the industry, it is, to an extent, and maybe always will be, the quintessential Grand Theft Auto experience.
Oh my goodness, thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun revisiting Grand Theft Auto 5, and I had a lot of fun writing this video actually. This was a really fun one to do. I think I enjoyed the exercise of like trying to condense the script where possible. I thought that was like just a really fun thing to do, because usually I'm like, oh, this video is gonna be like fucking 4 or 5 hours or whatever if I want to make it that long. And I'm sure the Red Dead one will be, you know, it'll be a long video, I'm sure. You know, my AC1 video was just like, you know, I'm gonna make this video as long as it needs to be to say everything I have to say. With GTA 5, it's not a game I'm as passionate for, so obviously, like, you know, I didn't feel like I had to go into detail on like every single mission, but I still had a lot that I wanted to say, and I think I managed to cover it and condense it, and I think I just enjoyed the challenge of being like taking all of these ideas and being like, how can I condense this and make the script as short as possible? And I think I did, and obviously the video's not short, but you know, shorter than a lot of the other stuff that I do. Thank you again so much to everybody on Patreon. You guys are the best. I really appreciate you. You're the best patrons out there. And you really do support me in making stuff like this. So if you've ever wanted to support me and the stuff that I do, Patreon's your best bet. Plenty of exclusive content, early access. There's a ton of stuff going on over there. So check it out if you want and drop me $1 or something. It's up to you. And thank you as well to, of course, my Patreon producers and master assassins. Cabbage, Ethan, Arenathon, Connoisseur with Sam, Damien the Not So Orange Gnome, Flash Paradox, and TJ. And that's it from me today. There's a lot of other projects I wanted to do this year that I've not really had time for, which is a bit of a shame, but hopefully I'll get to them at some point. I just have to prioritize. It's a little bit difficult when, you know, I am, there's a balance, right? Like, I'm in a position where I'm making the content I really want to make, and I can like do that and financially support myself doing that. I don't have to like fall back on making news videos like I used to do a couple years ago, which I'm deeply thankful for. But at the same time, I don't have the complete freedom to do literally whatever I want. I still have to, you know, play a bit into anniversaries, like, oh, it's 5 years later, or it's 10 years later, because those videos are more clickable than like 8 years later or 12 years. You know what I mean? Like, you know, just the algorithm prefers it. So like there's an element where I am trying my best to play into the algorithm and do what will get views, but without compromising the type of videos I like to make. Because it's like, do I want to make a big retrospective on Red Dead Redemption 2? Yes, I absolutely do. Would it be better if I could make it whenever? Yes, obviously it would be more convenient. I could work on another project that I wanted to work on and save Red Dead for another time, but because like I am still in a position where it's a bit up and down, it's like I kind of got to go, you know, where it makes the most business sense, even if it's still going to be like a video I hugely do want to make and it's going to be worth the time sort of thing. So it's, you know, a bit of a compromise there, but, you know, it's definitely not the worst thing that could happen. I'm having a great time. So I know there's been a lot of people that have been like, oh, when you're doing the Kingdom Come video, when you're doing the Tomb Raider video, at some point. At some point. I don't know when exactly, because other things take priority, but, you know, we'll see. Next big video is the Red Dead Redemption 2 video, so that'll be coming out hopefully toward the end of September. I don't know, depends how long it takes me to get through it, edit the video, write the script, you know, all that stuff. It's going to be a big one, but hopefully I'll be able to get it done by the end of September. I do also have this Bolt video waiting in the wings. It's been on Patreon for a few months now, and everyone that's watched it has said it's really good. I just haven't posted it to YouTube because I'm kind of afraid that it will just tank. And, you know, that's probably what will happen to it. I'm really proud of it. And, like, I'm worried that if I post it, no one's going to click on it. And then I'll be left feeling deflated because one of the videos that I really cared about, no one else did. So I'm, like, trying to think of, like, the right title that will, like, you know, bring people in and make people want to click. But at some point, I'm just going to have to post it, aren't I? Let's be real. Let's be honest with ourselves. I'm going to have to just post it at some point. Anyway, that's it from me. I won't keep you any longer. Thank you so much. I don't know how many people watch past the end of the video, how many people watch the outro segment, but it's nice to have a catch-up at the end of these videos. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you in the Red Dead Redemption 2 video. Much love. Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.